Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and if you've been watching this channel recently, you know I've been doing deep dives into the Finders FBI vault. Now, I've gotten two of those down, so I would highly suggest that if you're interested in going over page by page, those first two, please check that out. For a bigger overview, however, I did do a interview recently with Derek Bros of the Conscious Resistance, and we'll get into that in a moment, where for about 40 minutes we went over the highlights of the documents and gave you a synopsis. I'd say it's a great companion piece to the Conscious Resistance's Who Will Find What the Finders Hide. And there's even a more updated version of this. Go subscribe to their YouTube channel to go check that out as well. But what I thought that we would do is that we would really just kick it right off where we left off on the page, just a little bit of overlap and a little bit of a synopsis of where we're at. Right now, we're looking at the investigation from 1987 that happened in D.C. prior to FBI involvement. And once the FBI does get involved, remember, the first walkthrough, all the evidence that's obtained suddenly goes into limbo. It doesn't exist. Nobody can access it. But here's the thing. They literally marked these documents secret for 20 plus years. 20 plus, really closer to 30 plus, as you see that they became unclassified 2/3/2014. But as far as this large dump, we didn't get them until now. So let's start here. This, in my opinion, is before the FBI gets involved and starts to obfuscate some of the evidence on behalf of the CIA, because again, they work hand in glove. I know there's a lot of internal fighting and all that, but the idea that this customs agent and other police officers got it so wrong, and the Tallahassee police officers that had nothing to do with this investigation other than to get the search warrants for the DC police get it so wrong, it just does not mesh with reality, in my opinion. And maybe there's some people out there that want to disagree with me, but we've been pretty open and frank of where you can find the counter material. For instance, you can check out a lot of these guys' names, right? Their files are there. Michael Hallwell and Doug Ammerman, they're the two guys that had the 6 kids, but remember, 4 kids got away in a separate van. All the equipment that was there. And if you want to read Tobe Terrell, all right, and that is actually supposedly the son of this man right here, Robert Gardner Terrell, but they all have aliases. I'm sure they work together. And their side of the story, the game caller, all right? You can check that out as well. That's also available online and pretty easy to find. So let's get into it. This report deals with the entire investigation concerning a group of subjects who call themselves the Finders. This document will explain the involvement of the Metro Police Department and various agencies involved and the action taken during the course of the instant investigation. All the following information is still of a sensitive nature and should not be disseminated outside of this unit, okay? At all. In December of 1986, and remember, this is prior to this happening. This happens in, I believe, February of 87. And this is key, because even though we have the synopsis where it looks like they're part of a disinformation campaign, right? And they're doing low-level disinformation. When you look at this, it coincides so much with what happens in Tallahassee. Okay. So-and-so called the intelligence division and reported that she had information concerning a cult operating in the District of Columbia. So-and-so was advised that Detective Blank of this office handled cult investigations and was currently out of town, but would contact her after his return. He was contacted in late December by Detective so-and-so by telephone and advised she wished to be interviewed concerning this cult. All right? So 2 detectives of Maryland Park Police stated a section of the cult was operating in Maryland. All right? Remember, they had places not only in D.C., but it seemed like all over the country and beyond. Marion Petty, who is the game caller and the leader of this organization, was traveling around the world and had all sorts of CI connections. Stated that the group of individuals were trying to introduce her into the cult and explain the nature of the circumstances of the cult. Again, this is in December of 86, basically about 2 months before the incident happens, was advised, although this group was unusual, they were committing no criminal offenses and the police department would only be interested in the group was involved in criminal activities. Now, later on, you're going to find out that it looks like they're guns for hire, and it's pseudo-criminal activities because they have access to technology that other people don't. And they're going in and lying. There's no law against lying. They have aliases. They're propping all this stuff up. But when you're bringing in somebody who's not initiated, someone who I guess becomes an informant, well, what are you going to let them see? Remember, there's levels to this, compartmentalization. In January 1987, so-and-so again contacted the detectives and stated that some of the members were interested in exploring Satanism. Now, a very self-serving religion. Satanism probably had a broad term and still does in 1987. But the detective also advised that although Satanists are not criminals, they were interested in ascertaining what activity this group was involved in and asked the person to call detectives, blah, blah, if additional information became available. All right? So in 1987, Detective blah, blah received a phone call from the U.S. Customs Service in Tallahassee. This is the incident, February 5th. Customs was trying to find out if the Intelligence Division had any information concerning a group known as the Finders. The Customs representative stated that 6 children had been located in Florida along with 2 men, the 2 men I just showed you, and that the children were dirty, unkempt, insect-bitten, underfed, and possibly sexually abused. And remember, if you watch the one with Derek Brose, you'll see me read some of these Tallahassee reports. We're going to get into them. They're later on in this document. I'm trying to keep these at about 30 minutes so they're kind of like digestible for people. And by the way, thumbs this video up, share it with others. Let's get this info out there. All right. U.S. Customs stated that they tried to contact representatives of the Finders and they don't say the location, without success. And they feared other children were being abused at that address and were unsure if the children had been kidnapped from their parents. And later on, they're talking about how these kids weren't allowed to sleep inside, that they were kept in cages. One of the place in Virginia is referred to as the farm. The other place is the warehouse. Detective so-and-so was put in contact with the investigator of Tallahassee Police, who were the lead investigators in the case. They said that the 6 children recovered in Tallahassee, Florida, after a call to police stating the 6 children were being kept in the back of a van near Florida Park. The police responded, and the location and term of the children were in fact in poor condition and tried to question the 2 men. And identified as, we'll go back to it because I want people to understand they have been identified. Their names are out there. Michael Hallwell and Doug Ammerman. And again, they gave a ton of different aliases. Later on, we'll get into those aliases and the odd nature of how they behaved. They refused to answer questions by the police and were arrested for child neglect. The children were interviewed by the Tallahassee police, stated that they were en route to a smart school in Mexico and could not give any positive information concerning their parents. These people were supposedly their teachers. And later on in the document, again, they talk about how they would have to play games to get fed. It's pretty odd. The children, when interviewed by the Tallahassee police, stated that they were en route to smart schools, stated that the children were all extremely hungry and urinated and defecated on the floor during the interviews. Wow. They also stated that the children also talked about other children in D.C. and stated that they were under the control of the game caller. All right. So again, the game caller, if you want to hear their side of the story on the game caller, it's out there. All right. It's been out there for some time. But here is where it starts to get interesting, and something I highlighted with Brose is that the medical reports are out there. 2 were positively identified as being sexually abused, and that's still blacked out in this report, but you can get those reports if you'd like. And the psychological report also blacked out from HRS. Based on the information received from the source and from authorities in the state of Florida, AUSA blank authorized a search warrant for the premises in D.C., and the search warrants, and the other one is in Virginia, were executed for the premises by members of the MPD Intelligence Division on February 5th and 6th of 1987. Remember, the 5th is before the FBI gets involved. Although no children were found, large amounts of documents dealing with child rearing and shaping were recovered, along with manuals for master plans and dirty tricks for enemies. Dirty tricks for enemies of the Finders Group. All this information was turned over to the Florida authorities for evaluation. And again, still blacked out. They show the interviews here. And by the way, the notes for the interviews, they are in this document. So we're going to be getting to these. The week of February 11th, 1987, they're talking about those interviews right there, okay, and their extensive training. Detective Blank reported is attached and made part of the summary. And remember, by the way, guys, 176 pages are not available in this document. These aren't even all the documents that are out there. There are CIA documents on this. And I'd say, somewhere between 50 and maybe 75 of that 176 pages are duplicates. So we're missing about 100 pages on top of the stuff we're seeing redacted. 21 former Finders have been interviewed concerning their involvement in the organization. They stated the organization began as an alternative lifestyle in the 1960s, as many of them became disenchanted with the quasi-military, and this is the point here. When we say quasi-military, right, we are talking about an organization that is compartmentalized and that is doing odd things, not just for the sake of odd things, but to indoctrinate people into a system where there's a hierarchy and one person in control, supposedly one person. With the quasi-military order under the direct supervision of, I would say that's Marion Petty, many of the Finders, former members stated that they feared retribution from the Finders organization. So the former members are scared. We just talked about the documents on child rearing and dirty tricks for enemies. And now you can see that former members didn't want to speak out for fear of retribution. In the case of Blank, she needed police intervention to stop the harassment of the Finders. In the Blank case, Blank was burned down and remains an open arson. In the case, members of the Finders attempted to infiltrate Blank in the United States, and they don't even tell you what organization they're trying to infiltrate. They're saying they may be involved in arson. They're saying they're definitely involved in harassment. This is huge that even we're getting this much. In general, all members of the Finders who had left the group felt that they would harm all. Okay, all. They have 20 plus interviews, 21 former Finders, and all of them that left the group felt that they would come and harm them if they spoke out against Petty or his organization. Now let's talk about the family members, all right, because I think that that's another overlooked thing when we look at these people. Detective Blank interviewed all the family members who were willing to talk. Specifically, they all stated that Marion Petty had brainwashed their children and prevented any contact with either their children or grandchildren. So in other words, these people are pissed not only because their kids were taken away, but their grandkids were taken away and that they've been brainwashed. Members of the Finders, according to family members, would stop any contact by sending letters describing explicit sexual acts involving current members, including photographs and drawings. In the Blank case, members of the Finders attempted to take over the Blank family residence and Fort Blank out of their home. So in other words, one of these people that spoke out. Think about that. Very, very odd. So then the Virginia State investigation. Special Agent Blank of the Virginia State Police stated that his organization executed search warrants at the Finders' farm in Madison County, Virginia. Blank stated that this group appeared to be a survivalist organization with attempts to take over the city government in Culpeper, Virginia. So now we have an organization that may be involved in arson, that is trying to overtake people's homes, that's families are upset that they've taken their children and grandchildren and brainwashed them, that has a quasi-military style, that has a playbook on how to deal with enemies. Okay? Now here's just where it gets even worse, right? During Virginia State's investigation, information was revealed that bodies were buried on the farm at the Nethers, but excavation revealed nothing. It's so weird. It doesn't go into depth on that, but they're saying there are bodies there, but then they didn't find anything. However, cages were discovered on the premises that witnesses revealed were used to keep children during their visits to the farm. Keeping children in cages. Is there anything normal about this investigation? So now the FBI had contact with the finders since 1971, including a recent report dealing with CIA involvement with at least one of the members of the finders passing information overseas concerning activities of the Central Intelligence Agency. And that would probably be Petty. Think about that. Okay? When it became apparent that no federal laws were violated, the FBI vacated the investigation. So the FBI has been looking at this organization for quite some time. Remember, this is 87 we're talking now. Since 71, they knew there was some kind of CIA involvement, but they hadn't broken any laws. Central Intelligence Agency investigation. Although the CIA claims their only involvement was that blank was a former employee of the agency, it's probably Marion Petty, they stated that they were monitoring this investigation from the beginning. And then we have this whole thing blanked out. Remember, all this was classified for some time, turned secret almost immediately. Now let's get into this summary, because it's really important. Okay? It is the writer's belief that the Finders Organization is and has been utilized by the Central Intelligence Agency as a disinformation service spreading non-essential, non-critical information to various organizations throughout the United States and overseas. Think about that. Non-essential info. So most of these guys are given busy work, but every once in a while they're there to spread just a teeny bit of disinfo, just a teeny bit. All right? Notice we're not getting to the sexual stuff yet. This group, to the most part, is made up of overeducated non-achievers who lack the inborn initiative to succeed on their own. In other words, people that are easily led. And no offense, but there's a lot of us out there, right? There's a lot of us that, and when I say us, I mean human beings, that need direction, need somebody to push us. There are very few true alphas that are willing to try to go on their own and divert from society and make their own thing. And there are those that, become enchanted by a charismatic leader, which apparently Marion Petty was. Okay? Now, to say that Marion Petty was the overall leader of this whole thing, I don't believe that he was. I think that he was taking some of these orders and directions through intelligence agencies, 100%. I think that's what the evidence shows. All right? So now they've got all these people. Therefore, they fell in with a charismatic leader who gave them direction and self-importance. To the most part of this organization, individually, is harmless. However, when directed and monitored by a controlling factor, they are capable of destructive and illegal activities. And as in any cult structure, the main drive is for the group and the individual values and ideology is lost. Therefore, when a member is asked to perform a task that heretofore may be objectionable, he or she performs this mission for the good of the group. The ends justify the means, and they push you ever so slowly. Remember, the children are playing games for food. As for the abuse of the children, I do not think that child abuse was a planned tactic of the group. Okay, as in it wasn't like a bunch of people getting together to abuse children. I agree with that. I think that what he says here is correct. But as in any cross-section of society, sick and demented subjects belong to a cult as well. I do believe that the shaping of the children is a planned experiment of the group, as in the case of the Nazis. They strove for a perfect society, thereby in their own tried to form a group of children and ultimately adults that did not suffer from the ills of normal society, but took only the benefits that afforded their perfection. And if you look at MK Ultra, them trying to build a perfect soldier, trying to build a clean slate mind, it's very similar. It's very similar. And for how long those sub-programs went on, I think they went on well after we were told they were done. Lastly, I do not feel that the Finders have disbanded as reported by their leaders, but instead, as reported in their master plan, have appeared to disband to prevent further detection by law enforcement or social service officials. I firmly believe that this group should be monitored in a general sense, and if further developments occur, they should be noted. So there you have it. And remember, all this stuff is secret. Okay? This is the stuff that gets classified immediately so that the public can't see it, because there's so many questions that would arise. So here we go. This is a report on the finder's involvement with the CIA. Here we go. As approximately 15:30 hours, 2:18:87, Detective Blank spoke with Special Agent Blank, reference any contact the members of the finders have had with the agency. Special Agent Blank was guarded, but frank in his response. He confirmed that Blank, Isabel, now deceased, that's the wife of Marianne Petty, was an employee of the agency from 1950 to 1971. When asked if our investigation was treading on anyone's toes out there, Blank replied, sort of. He acknowledged that they have someone working on the case since it first broke in the news media. So again, this is the acknowledgement that the CIA was working on this case as soon as it was reported. He also stated that the agency is aware that during the period of 1969 to 1971, I would say this is Marianne Petty, traveled to Moscow, North Korea, and Vietnam. This is where it looks like Marianne Petty is absolutely employed by the agency and sharing information as an asset, at the very least, with the Central Intelligence Agency. And all of this is blacked out. Then the special agent stated that he would contact Detective Blank on 2/19 to arrange to come to his office for a further discussion. As of 14:30 hours, he has not contacted this office. Probably gave him a little too much. Notice how much of this is blanked out. As a practical matter, what is not being said is as important as what Special Agent Blank has said. He acknowledged that we are treading on their toes and that they have had someone working on this case since February 5th when it broke. They apparently have a vested interest in Petty and or the group. They have not contacted any of the investigating agencies while they have been working on the case. They are also aware that Petty traveled to prohibited countries. Think about that. He was traveling to prohibited countries during a period of hostilities that could only have been arranged by them, aka the CIA. Finally, he stated that, and this is probably, more a summation of what Petty was involved with that agency. This could explain a lot about the group's funding, which we have been unable to document at this point. So he thinks that he actually gave him a clue to where this group was really being funded from. And all this is blacked out. Okay? So even though, we got the documents years later, these secret documents on this, we're missing a lot. We got a lot, but we're missing a lot. And guys, let's thumbs this video up and share it with others. We're still going. We're going to still crank through this. This is going to be a long deep dive because we're going to go through every single page on it. So we get through all this. Blank did not know that the person he turned the information over to in Europe was a source of this office. See how this interconnects? They have an FBI source that probably got some of the documentation. That's why, remember, the FBI in 1971 was investigating his link to the CIA, Petty's link? Well, that's because, guy that was probably in the agency or they thought to be an asset of the Central Intelligence Agency was also an informant for the FBI. Overlap. A source of this office and is not aware that the source brought the disk back to this office. Blank actually transferred the disk in London. Detective Blank then turned the disk over to the WFO FBI Counterintelligence Office for analyzation. We have not been appraised of the results of the analysis, nor do we expect to be. Think about that. They get this disk that supposedly has all that important information from an FBI informant, and then the FBI officers, I think this is the FBI talking to them. The FBI officers are not allowed to even look at it. Regardless of what type of operation they may be engaged in, there will be no justification for the way the children have been treated. And the matter will be addressed in Family Division Superior Court. Damn straight. So this is the MPD report, by the way. All right. So now you got a request form here. And it's on the FBI Savannah Information Technology Center. Okay? That's this is in Georgia. So many states are involved in this. And a lot of this is blacked out. But again, they're checking out businesses associated with the finders. That's what this is. Okay? Blanked out, blanked out. So here you go. Attached are copies of investigation information services printouts setting forth results of inquiries conducted by investigative information services. Also attached are 2 copies of an accomplishment reply form. It is requested that you, the record of the investigation information services accomplishments on this form. Okay. So check it out. And there you go. There's the special agent supervisor. They're trying to get all this information on different organizations that have been funded by the finders. Let's keep going down. Let's keep going. Names and addresses, credit granting. More blanked out. Social security number traces, spouse traces, union credit reports. So this is all the financial stuff, okay? Let's continue on. Because I hope we're going to get to actual police stuff from Tallahassee. All right, so this is some more of the back and forth. These are the library assets. Let's see. Here we see LexisNexis. Property reports. We do it live here, folks. We do it live. Corporate report mailed. Here we go. So you can see even more. Like, these guys had an office. It wasn't just the warehouse and the farm. They had offices, businesses, residences. And this guy was traveling globally where he shouldn't have been, Marion Pettit. Okay. So here we go. I think we're finally going to get into the Tallahassee stuff. What we're looking at here is more FBI documentation. So this again is with the white slavery traffic of children. So here we go. When we get to the summation, all this is blanked out, okay? Because now we're talking about Charlie Rose, the congressman, to discuss allegations concerning a group called the Finders. Both Rose and Blank provided information concerning these allegations to the Department of Justice. Remember, the Department of Justice is the one that reopens it in 93. WMFO investigated a group called Finders in February 87. Finders was an alternate lifestyle group located at blank, 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 da-da-da-da. The group was purportedly headed by and this is probably CIA asset, Marion Pettit, in Virginia, with the leader in the Washington, D.C. area. They closed the case with no violations of federal law, no child abuse, no sexual exploitation of children was determined to occur. That's when they cleaned it up, and they're trying to bring it back here. They advised that this matter was brought up again sometime in 1989 when TV talk show host was purportedly planning to air a special exposing the Finders as a satanic cult. Could have been Geraldo Rivera. Could have been Phil Donahue. Could have even been Oprah Winfrey. But I think that more than likely Geraldo. Geraldo had done the Ted Gunderson interview, and he did it with Michael Aquino and all that other stuff that's available online. We got interview Quantico with information concerning this investigation. Let's see. Advised that when the televised special aired, there was no response to Finders. And remember, there was supposed to be like a 48 hours thing that never came out either. Let's see. Review records concerning the Finders at Quantico and advise FBI headquarters and WMFO of any reference to Finders specifically. This is them asking for the documentation. Okay? So again, blanked out, pretty much the same thing. There's a lot of duplication in there. So they're asking, for the preliminary inquiry and the abuse of the Finders. Still looking for that. So here we go. Through liaison into the Tallahassee, Florida Police Department, review their investigative files concerning the Finders. This is where it gets a little more juicy, right? This is where we actually get to see the Tallahassee Police Department's reports. And because look right here, it also says, ascertain the status of any physical evidence maintained by the TPD, review the same and advise the FBI headquarters and WMFO. Locate involved TPD personnel to include the then chief of police and determine if any outside agency, notably from U.S. intelligence community, attempted to influence the outcome of their investigations. Of course they did. Of course they did. All right, so we're going to keep doing this. asking for leads and info in Miami. These are the teletypes for the search warrants, how they were able to obtain them. All right. Pretty much the same thing we just read. So these are the people that are going to handle these inquiries into the Tallahassee Police Department. Where are we at? We're at 30 minutes. You know what? I think we're going to end it right here because we are at 30 minutes. We'll save the Tallahassee Police Department for part 4. I want to thank you guys all for joining me. Thumbs this video up and share it with others. And remember, I'm a documentary filmmaker. You can check those out too. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture are all available here. We do 3 to 7 videos a day. I'm also going to be doing Mixed Martial Mindset at 6 p.m. today. I'm really looking forward to that with John Fitch, where we go over the BMF Madison Square Garden card that was a really good card. I enjoyed it. You know, it's good stuff. So make sure you thumbs this video up. Join the Burmis Brigade. Let's get it to 40,000. We're at 35,000 plus. We're still going. We talked about, you know, psychotropic drugs today. We talked about Sandusky this week. We talked about Kevin Spacey. We've been doing the Finders and so much more. So if you like this material, now's the time to subscribe. And if you want to support me financially, this is how I do it. All my videos are demonetized out of the gates. I'd say about, at this point, it's like 30 to 50% get remonetized, but it limits my reach. It limits my finances. There is no Patreon. There is no Subscribestar. So far, I haven't had a problem with GoFundMe. They don't take that much money, and it helps go to feed this guy and take care of his nieces and do the things that we all like to do in this world. And what I really like to do is talk about the truth with you guys. So if you like that, 5, 10, 15 bucks means the world to me. I absolutely love you guys. It is not about left and right. It's always about right and wrong. I know that you guys know that, and that's why I will see you all on the flip side.